Around 2.1 billion people in the world profess to be Christians, and around 1.6 billion people in the world profess to be Muslims. Those are the two top religions. Both of them are based on the roots of Abraham, and both have a little bit in common, where the idea is that we're supposed to practice the golden rule, love your neighbors as yourselves, and that kind of thing, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. A lot of those principles carry in a lot of religions. However, there's some differences that are pretty important. And one of the things that just recently happened on the Modern Day Debate channel was 3 Christians, 3 separate debates against 3 Muslims. And they asked some big questions. One of the debates, I'm going to feature snippets from each of the debates. We'll talk about whether or not we agree with the debaters. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons of their arguments, and we'll talk about the validity of some of the arguments. So you've come to the right place. One of the reasons why I want to say that I feel like I'm qualified to talk about the validity of some of the arguments is because I do teach an executive doctoral class. I hold a PhD in business administration. My name is S.J. Thomason, and I'm located in the States. So here we go. Let's start off with inspiring philosophy. This is Michael Jones, and he is up against Jvnior. Jvnior is Palestine origin, and let's go. Let's listen to what he has to say.
He is a Western Muslim. He's influenced by the West. He is a good person as far as I can tell. He's not beating his wife as far as I can tell. And I would never accuse him of that without actual clear evidence of it. So I just want to be clear about this, okay? I'm going on what the actual data shows. If you're offended by the data, you're offended by facts. This is a debate about the research. If you're going to debate which is better, you need to come with actual facts, because this is a sociological debate, not a mere religious or philosophical one. That is the most important point here. And if we're conceding that there's less education, more violence in Islam, game over, Christianity creates better societies. And again, the results speak for themselves. Where is everyone immigrating to? The world, the society, the civilization that Christianity built. The society we built that ended slavery, that gave value to children, that fostered and helped develop modern science, that educated the world by creating hundreds of written languages around the world so people could read the Bible. Okay? This is the religion that has made the world great.
With that, we will switch it over to Jvnior for his 5-minute rebuttal as well. The timer is set for you, Jvnior.
Thank you. That's the same religion responsible for the Holocaust, by the way. Look,
It's unfortunate that this is the second time in the other part of the debate. I'm going to highlight exactly what another debater, Javad, said about the Holocaust. And the assumption here is that Christianity had somehow anything to do with the Holocaust. Now, we'll get into that a little bit in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to note something. Hitler was not somebody who thought he would be judged eventually by a Jewish carpenter. Hitler did not believe in Christianity. He used Christianity as a tool and a mechanism to con his own people into his beliefs, just like the way he used socialist views to con people through the name of his party, the National Socialist Party. One of the things that this fascist did, this racist fascist did, is he conned people by using the zeitgeist of the day. And that was a method that he used. He outlined it even in Mein Kampf. If you read Mein Kampf, you'd see it's called Mein Suffering. It is about how he started off in Austria and he gravitated towards the socialist belief. But I'm getting beyond myself right now. I just want to clear that up really quickly, that Christianity had nothing to do with the Holocaust, with the exception of Hitler taking some texts written by Martin Luther back around the 1500s. Martin Luther wrote a book called On the Jews and Their Lies. And unfortunately, that book is horrible. And that aspect of Martin Luther's beliefs, which has been denounced by numerous Christians of the Lutheran and other faiths, that aspect was used again by Hitler. But I digress. Let's listen to a little bit more on his debate.
Be honest, Michael. Honestly, debating you is way too easy because, look, I'll be honest. You ran out of things to say. You retracted your statement condemning the genocide in Gaza. You said, if there's a genocide in Gaza, I condemn it. You have been exposed to the whole world today, Michael, and you don't even know it because you're so arrogant. You're so arrogant that you read a Hebrew verse to your English audience, and you expect one of them to read it. Nobody can read this verse. Nobody can read Hebrew in your audience. You have a Hebrew tattoo and you're showing it off. That's a simple sign of your arrogance. Society is built by people, not by robots, not by systems, people. Michael, you have not shown me that you're a good person.
Okay, so we don't disagree with the idea that society is built by people, not by robots. People build robots, and so basically it drills down to society is definitely built by people. However, he does tap on something important. He talks about what happened in Gaza over the past couple of years. However, we must note the start of Gaza, which Ridvan, which we're also going to get to his debate, Apostate Prophet, does point out what happened on October 7th, 2023, and what initiated the atrocities over in Gaza. Yes, we all agree there's atrocities in Gaza. Even the Pope agreed that we've seen some terrible things that have happened. A lot of people have starved, and there are some innocent people over there, including the people in the churches that were bombed. That said, we also have to know that this was initiated by people in Gaza, the Hamas group, and Hamas was supported largely by people in Gaza. And so this is a really difficult situation, a difficult issue. And unfortunately, it's one that Jvnior is very passionate about, which I can't blame him. He has family over in Gaza, and he suffered, as he said, for 700 days, not knowing if they were going to be around the next day because of the bombs. It's tragic. So that is a summary of a little bit on that debate. I want to say hi to Alexis Corral. She says, prior to the Christian conquest of the empire, hospitals, private charities, orphanages, and governmental assistance to the poor weren't really things, for these are Christian innovations. Now, that is from an agnostic called Bart Ehrman. All right, so I am going to go to the next screen, which I want to show you. So here we go. We are going to go to the next screen. And so, whoops. And I'm going to open this up, by the way. This is a free-for-all today. I haven't done a free-for-all in a long time. And so we're going to do a free-for-all today where I'm going to let you come in. Now, here is Daniel Haqiqatjou. He was up against Andrew Wilson. Now, Andrew Wilson is an Orthodox Christian. I should have mentioned that Inspiring Philosophy is a Christian. I'm not sure exactly which denomination. He hasn't made that entirely clear to people. But here's what Daniel Haqiqatjou, here was what I thought was his funniest moment. Now, there were some flaws in this argument on both sides, on Daniel's side and on Andrew's side. And so I'm going to showcase those. I made an hour-long video yesterday that talked about that. So I'm going to condense that quite a bit today and just talk about some basics. But I've got an outline of each of these debates. So stick around. I've got some reasons why you can side with one side or the other, or you can listen to the arguments on both sides and decide they're deficient, or they're both sufficient for you. Here we go.
The acceptance of homosexuality, LGBT rights, and modern feminism. Even though he's a conservative, Andrew already accepts huge chunks of this liberal reform. He's fine with abolishing slavery, rejecting monarchy, ending blasphemy, and adultery punishments. His conservatism simply draws an arbitrary line at a later stage, roughly 1950s America. But libtard progressives follow that same reform trajectory, just a few stages or steps further. Andrew isn't defending traditional Christianity. He's defending his preferred arbitrary stopping point on a progressive path he already agrees with. In other words, the difference between him and the libtards is quantitative, not qualitative.
It's interesting here. So no obedience of wife to husband. Now, the word obedience is kind of a funny word. St. Paul told us as Christians to submit ourselves to our husbands as wives, and for husbands to basically treat your wives really well. And that's an important principle that Christians are supposed to abide by. So the idea of obedience is just kind of a tough word. Now, how does this obedience be enforced? And that's the challenge. And that's something that Inspiring Philosophy brought up, because he pointed out that in some of these different areas, people have enforced that by beating their wives or humbling them into submission. And that is not appropriate. That is something that's never been appropriate in the Christian faith. The idea of a ban on homosexuality, well, for many years, Christians did have a ban on homosexuality. It's been more open lately. And it's something that is a practice that's been going on at least since the Roman Empire. I mean, homosexuality has been practiced. And when I say practiced, I mean the actual practice, the act of what a homosexual does, the sexual act. That is something that was banned under sodomy laws for many years in the United States, but that has been recently opened up in most states. Most states have actually opened that up, and people have judged that one way or another. But in alignment with the Christian faith, if you look at the book of Romans 1, it talks against that pretty specifically. And this idea of the number of genders, no, really, there's just two sexes. The word is sex that we should look at there, one male and one female, just as it was pointed out in the book of Genesis. However, here's where I think is the funniest thing that Haqiqatjou did. Comes right next. Look at this.
Just a dispute over where to halt the same ongoing cucking to secular liberalism. So Andrew's conservatism is not principled, it's arbitrary. Given this, I predict
that is the funniest thing. Because he's got blue hair. If you're not looking at this and you can't see what I've got here, it's a picture that is a mock-up that Andrew Haqiqatjou did of Andrew. It actually kind of looks like Mr. Wonderful. It looks like Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, and he's got blue hair and he's got a nose ring and a ring in his ear, and he's basically saying Islam is backwards on women and freedom, and so. So there's that.
Andrew will debate like a blue-haired libtard today and use a pro-liberal strategy against Islam. Because again, Christianity can't beat Islam on traditional values for the simple reason that Islam isn't amenable to reform the way Christianity is. So he'll likely attack Islam exactly like a blue-haired alphabet person would by calling Islam backwards on marriage, gender roles, and scientific and economic progress. But if Andrew attacks Islam using secular liberal values, he faces a dilemma. Because tomorrow he's debating an atheist on whether Christianity or secular liberalism is better for society. So any pro-liberal...
Now it's very funny because it's Andrew pictured as if he's a Greek Orthodox priest and he's got the full garb on. So it is actually kind of a funny move. It was a very funny move. I have to give Muslim skeptic props on that particular move right there. It was kind of funny. So, okay, so let's take a look at the third debate. Let's take a look at a little clip from the third debate. I'm just giving you a taste of these before I give you the overall summary. And I give you some special facts that weren't presented in this. Basically facts about violence going on in the world. I've got specific statistics that are going to show you what actually really is going on and what you really need to know about because it's important. Okay, so let's take a look at this third very important screen. We're going to look at, hold on. Here we go. Okay, so here we have what Jvad is using. Now, this is going back to this Nazi argument that I find completely ridiculous. I mean, it's so crazy that they're using this, but they're also the main argument that Jvad is Dr. Jvad. Apparently, he's being educated in Harvard. I don't know if he's fully earned his doctorate degree, but he's being educated in Harvard. And Craig, I see you there. I hope you want to come in here because I am going to post a link. In fact, I'll post the link now because I'm about to get done with these videos. And so I'm going to post this link in case you or somebody else wants to come in. This is an open mic conversation. Okay, so I'm copying this and I'm going to put it into, let's see here. I'm going to put it right here. Hold on, paste. Here we go. There is the link to Studio. Okay, so I think I can put this up at the top. Let's just double check here. Let's move this up to the top. Maybe I can't do that. I haven't figured out how to do that. Okay, what if I star it? Okay, there is the link. It's right there in case you can't see it. So I'm going to keep that open for a little bit. So let's listen to this. Now, Javad, who was arguing against apostate prophet, who's Ridvan Idamar, his argument was basically that everybody through history has taken this idea of the Amaleks from the Old Testament, the enemies against the Israelites in the Old Testament, who fought Moses and Joshua and others. He is saying that through history, we have used the word Amalek as a sort of a means to justify killing people who are our enemies by labeling them as Amalek. Now, I have absolutely never heard this argument before in my life. I'm pretty old, and have never heard the argument that Amalek is who we're fighting. Okay. Craig, what do you think?
Where I didn't hear what you just asked. Do you see where I am?
Are you in somewhere like Malibu, California?
No, I'm down in Newport Beach. Can you see the...
Yeah,
really
it looks
nice
nice.
here. So hopefully the stream will last. I'm just sitting down somewhere. I'm seeing the connection, but the connection seems fine, right? I'm going to turn off the
Yeah.
mic and the camera in a minute.
Yeah, no, the connection's good. No, did you happen to catch one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today is
Was what?
well, the 3 debates. I don't know if you saw them on Modern Day Debate, but 3 debates against Christians.
I saw one, but I'm not sure if they're the same ones. I saw Jim Bob Naturalism versus Planet Peterson. I'm not sure if that was from the same tranche of debates, though.
That
You're
was
talking about.
I didn't see that one, but so this is by Daniel Haqiqatjou, who went up against Andrew Wilson.
Okay,
And-
no, I didn't see that one yet.
Okay, so there was that one, and then there was the one between Inspiring Philosophy and this guy called Jvnior.
Didn't see that one. I always watched the Jim Bob, and I watched.
And then-
While I'm walking, I'm listening to. There's a channel called Breakfast Tacos. I don't know if you've heard of him or know him. He's sort of like a old school style. Like they're kind of like that style of they get together and like they have a whole bunch of debates with theists, and they're a bit more aggressive than they're kind of like the old way. And
Okay,
they're analyzing the Planet Peterson versus Jim Bob. So I was listening to that.
Now, is Planet Peterson based on Jordan Peterson, or is it just plain Peterson?
No, I think it might be facetiously referring to Jordan Peterson, maybe, but he's not a fan. If he means it sort of like maybe. I don't know. I've never heard him explain the name, so I have no idea.
Okay,
He's
nice.
kind of like, do you know the DZ debates guy? There's a couple. I was going to make a video about this because there's a couple of people who they're pretty recently. I've only found them like in the last year or so. Maybe they're new channels, but first I've discovered them. And they're sort of like the old school channels where they're new atheist style, aggressive, Christianity like is irrational types for the
Yeah,
most part.
I haven't seen that for a while. I've been I don't know. I decided I wanted to start watching some of these Muslim debates, and it's only because I guess I've watched so many atheist debates that they get kind of like they seem like same after a while. Like the line every single weekend, the line is on, and there's the same questions like, why should we believe in God? And I think
Oh yeah. No,
you've heard the
line
answer
has
every
become-
week.
The line has become but the thing with the line is Matt Dillahunty. Maybe it's me. Maybe I only get because I only watch usually what's sent to me. You know how things are sent because you tend to click on it. So I get a lot of Matt Dillahunty on the line videos, and he just seems like he's gone insane lately. Like he just seems like 50 times more grumpy and aggressive than he ever used to be. Maybe not, but that's what it seems like. It seems almost like unwatchable. Like he's just too, you jackass. And like there's a thing on the line that's hilarious because there's a delay. When I was on the channel, there's a delay. And every single time it pops up, Matt Dillahunty gets mad as if the person is cutting us off. And he goes, oh my God. He knows there's a delay. So when it comes on, you're like, hello, can you hear me? Yeah, because if you're on the receiving end of it, you can't tell when you're talking. And he knows that's happening. But every single time he acts like the person is deliberately trying to interrupt. He did it to me. Oh my God.
Well, when did you call him? Was it recently?
No, you saw it. It was like a year and a half ago. I got into some tiff with who's the guy who runs the line? Jimmy Snow.
Something. Oh yeah, Jimmy Snow.
Yeah, he said some really weird thing to me online. Some like really like perverted psycho thing. And I started like going, I started trying to like say I can't believe you would act this way. I know all these atheists and most of them are cool and they would be really annoyed with you for doing this and blah, blah, blah. And it just turned into this whole online feud. And then I went on with Matt Dillahunty and Promise. Do you know who that is?
Matt Dillahunty and Promise.
She calls herself Promise now. It used to be Eve Was Framed.
Oh yeah. I've seen Eve Was Framed. Yeah.
I went on with her and Matt Dillahunty, and it didn't go very well. You watched some of it. You said he was rude to me. It didn't go very well. And then I went back with Jimmy Snow, and it was fun, actually. Jimmy Snow was fine. We sort of cleared the air, and he has a side where he can just be charming and kind of fun and cool, and he was just, kind of cool and nice. And we got along. And it put the feud to bed. But when I went on with Matt and Promise originally, maybe it was the context, because I was on the context of I had feuded with Jimmy Snow, and now here I am. But it wasn't good. They weren't. It wasn't cool. It wasn't good at all. You know, and usually I get along with people when I'm talking online, but it didn't go
Yeah.
well with Matt. It was weird. He did this, like, I've done a video about it because he asked me for my evidence, right? And I gave my usual story about spiritual experiences. But he did this thing where he goes a step further. It's not just that I don't necessarily expect an atheist to go, oh, you've had spiritual experiences that are really compelling. I'm a Christian now. You know, I kind of understand that's not how it works. And I don't think it's necessarily compelling evidence for him, but he tries to go a step further and tells me why it shouldn't be compelling evidence for me, which is totally ludicrous. Like, your spiritual experiences, you know, aren't real, and you know that. Hi, how you doing? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, here's what I want to do. I want to play part of this debate. I'm going to play part of one of the debates so you can get a taste of the argument from one of the sides.
Okay.
So basically both of these debates are on whether or not Christian, well, there's 3 debates. 2 of them are on whether or not Christian values are superior to Muslim values. And of course, a lot of the Muslims, 2 of the Muslims have the argument of talking about traditional values and how Muslims are better able to maintain traditional values than Christians. And so this first debater I'm going to show you is Daniel Haqiqatjou, and he's going to talk about how Christians are kind of losing it. We're becoming more liberal and all that kind of stuff, especially in the United States and in the West. And then the second debater is also talks about basically this movement towards liberalism. But in the second debate, it's interesting with Apostate Prophet. He says it was kind of a good thing that Muslims have gone towards liberalism because then they dump some of the too much traditional views. So you got 2 different kinds of Muslims here. But I think I'm going to put the first one on and let you see.
Daniel, I know I've seen him in debates a couple of times.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I removed that. Since I removed it, didn't remove it. Remove. Okay. So let me just go to show you this one right here. Yes. Okay. Here's Daniel Haqiqatjou. Now he's got a channel called Muslim Skeptic. It's got like 500,000 people, by the way. So,
Really?
yeah, I never even heard. Okay, here we go.
Preserving family requires imposing duties limiting sexual freedom and providing care for children and the elderly. Preserving a nation requires duties to uphold shared norms, honor national symbols, or limit immigration. So preserving traditional values necessitates all these duties. The problem is duties are hard work requiring personal sacrifice. Because of this, duties necessarily restrict individual liberties while also generating inequality and discrimination. This is a problem for secular liberalism, which strives to free people burdened by duties. So the secular liberal system gradually eliminates duties to maximize individual freedom.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, I think that's, it's weird because I know I don't agree with this guy on a lot of stuff because he's too hardcore. But that little snippet, yeah, I think there's truth in that for sure. Because inspiring philosophy will make this sort of a similar argument about, and if you look at what's going on in like England right now, and they're losing their core values for exactly that reason. They're sort of like giving away the store, So there's definitely truth in what he just said. That little snippet right there. Why? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. What I pointed out in a different video is I was talking about how he's assuming that all Christians are jumping down the liberal bandwagon, but I think that that's kind of unfair. Like, I look at the Catholic Church, for example. The church has not advocated for a lot of these things that other churches might advocate, like, say, LGBT flags flying in the church or anything like that.
Well, sometimes the church gets. Sometimes it depends. Sometimes the churches get woke, and sometimes the individual pastors get too woke, and so he's kind of right, but his criticism doesn't routinely apply. Because other times it's the opposite. It depends on which church.
Yeah, well, that also could apply if you talk about some Muslims in the United States, like the other Muslim in this other debate called Javad. Javad is a more liberal. He goes to Harvard. He's earning his PhD, and he's very much advocating basically all of the liberal views, and he's saying that we need to move that way. And so he's pretending like no Muslims are adopting any sort of liberal views if you live in a liberal context like the United States.
Right.
But
which is also not true.
Yeah.
I mean, one of a lot of the Muslims in California, there's a whole Persian community, and they're generally secular and westernized in a good way because they came from the fall of the Shah, so they were like rich, well-educated Persians. way back when, like 78, 79, a lot of them came over here. And there's a whole community, and they're cool. For the most part, they're normal. They're Western.
Yeah, have you ever
they're
seen those things
Americanized.
where they talk about what Iran looked like in the 1970s, like what the women looked like?
It's unbelievable. It's really sad. And you see women and they're dressed normally, and like, yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah, because it's,
Women drove cars, and like women got educated, and they, and then now they have to wear bags over their heads.
well, that was,
Apparently it's not as bad as it was, or it's not as bad as we think. I watched some of the travel vlogs, those things where they go to like travel weird places. And
yeah.
they say it's not as bad as you would think. And I was talking to this hippie friend of mine who lived next door. And he said he traveled there in like the 70s. He said it was the best place in the world. Said people were really friendly and they loved Americans. So,
Yeah, so actually what that is, it's kind of a cautionary tale on what could happen to places like the United Kingdom if you have too much influx of people with the ultra hyper traditional values.
Absolutely, because they're not there to assimilate. They're there to take over. They even say that. It's part of the charter of the, it's part of the whole agenda. It's madness. You know what the most common boy's name in England is right now?
Muhammad.
Yep. And you know what the most common boy's name in Ireland is right now?
Oh no. Please, is it Muhammad?
Yep.
Are you serious? Really?
Yes, both places. But Ireland's doing it too.
Gosh.
England let in, I think, 1 million people last year, 1 million Muslims. I was watching. Who's the atheist guy who's kind of on our side? He's really pretty good, actually. He's really pro-Israel. Douglas Murray, I think his name.
Oh, I like Douglas Murray. Yeah, he's a good guy.
He was on one of these. I was watching the whole. I watched the whole show. Maybe it was Mark. It was either Mark Levin or it was like David Wood or something like that. But he was talking about it. And 1 million people they let in last year, and England has like 60 million people. So just do the math. There are like 6% of the population now. It's going to keep growing.
Sorry.
And for the most part, they don't want to assimilate. It's not like Latinos who come here who are basically easily turned into Americans because they're Catholic. They have a lot of similar values and stuff. Now, there's some struggles with assimilation. It's not the same thing. I mean, Muslims, they're not here to become part of the culture. Or in England, they're not.
Yeah, and in some places, that's the thing. Like I work with quite a few Muslims. I work with quite a few people in different groups, and especially Muslims. It tends to be a very, very well-represented group, especially in departments like our information technology department, because we just recruit all over the place, especially Iran. Like we recruit a ton of people from Iran, and they're very assimilated. So, it just really depends on where you are. And I think the idea that somebody said is if the Muslims are a minority, like a true minority in an area, they usually will assimilate. But if they're the majority, like in Dearborn, Michigan, then they mainly want to have Sharia law there.
Right. Have you seen the footage since that something happened where Dearborn was in the news and they were showing footage of it? There's like Muslim prayers at 6 a.m. or something and then at night you hear the Muslim prayer.
Yeah. They don't like church bells. They don't like music. There's definitely not assimilation.
No.
So
it's not the goal. They want to enact Sharia law and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just madness. That's what they're doing in England. There are some towns that are majority Muslim, and you can't really walk through there as a woman safely and be not without covering.
Yeah, and that's a concern. Now, when you said that thing about Ireland, I got scared because when I picked out my two sons' names, and this is going back about 20 years. I went to the Irish top 10 and picked two of the top 10 names, Jack and Sean. It was like I had to pick the two big names for Ireland. And Connor was another one that was coming in. I think it was third at the time. So I was thinking about that name. But it wasn't Muhammad.
Now you pick Muhammad. That's really scary. It's almost like they're trying to be suicidal. So I agree with what that guy said. It's like secular. It's like the furthest reach of secularism is just to we don't care about our values enough to even protect them or preserve them.
Well, that's the whole thing that I think he points out here is a lot of it started going back to as far as our values, a lot of it started in, say, German universities in the 1700s, the 1800s. It started a lot of times too with schooling. So I looked at when did state schooling come about, like all over the world. When did state schooling come in? I guess the first place was in China, but then it came over to Europe, like in the 1700s, the Prussian Empire or the Prussian area, and then it basically kind of spread in the French Revolution, and then it spread to the rest of Europe, and then it came to the United States between the 1800s and the early 1900s. The idea of public schools, and why I'm saying that is because what they say, the winners write the history. And so one of the things that one of the debaters had, Javad, he kind of wanted to have a revisionist view of what happened during the Crusades. And I think to myself, well, I read the history books written by the winners, so of course I read the perspective that came in from people who were on the side that won, which is the Union.
Right.
and so so I don't read the other perspective, which is he was trying to bring up the other perspective. There is another perspective in every war and every thing like that. And so but we didn't have to worry about that so much before state schools, when you have the government basically also trying to push its perspective, just like what we saw in communist countries.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Maybe I
There's
should do that.
definitely-
Maybe I should get to that one debate with Javad. I could probably show you some of that. Oh, actually, before I do that, Craig, so I want to actually tell you what Andrew's big argument was, because I don't know what you think of this because it was so bad. You want me to see you zoom ahead and see what Andrew's big argument was?
Yeah, you can. Andrew Wilson's argument was bad.
Yeah, this is
'Cause
going
he's
to.
usually good. That's weird.
Oh,
Okay.
you're not gonna. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. I died. I couldn't believe it.
Uh-oh.
So wait, let me just make sure I got to the right guy here. Hold on, I'm zooming ahead. Okay, let me just see where Andrew starts here. Okay, I'm going back. Here we go. Okay, here's Andrew's big debate. Here, I don't know if you can see this. Let me make sure you can see where I'm looking at here. Okay, yeah, Muslim inbreeding. This is Andrew's big argument. I don't know if you can see this. You probably can't see it, but listen to Andrew.
And has created some of the dumbest fucking human beings on planet Earth. The most common type of inbreeding is first cousin marriage. The rates of first cousin marriage in comparison to Christian nations is staggeringly high, even in comparison to regions occupied by Arab Christians. When a nation has both Christians and Muslims, Muslims are often double or higher than Christians. Example, India, Lebanon. Next slide, please. Muslim inbreeding. Oh, sorry about that. Pakistan at 65%. 65%, meaning more likely than not, you're having sex with your cousin, and if you're not, you're the weird one. Okay? For the low IQ members of MDD, that means these people are more likely than not having sex with their aunts or uncles' children. Saudi Arabia, 50 to 58%, with an average 76 IQ. Who would have thought it? UAE, 54%, 82 IQ. The crown jewel of the Arab world, you are more likely than not to be banging your first cousin. Iran, 40%, 80 IQ. Yemen, 45%, 62.9 IQ. Qatar, 30%, 80.8 IQ. Now, we're going to continue, right? Oman, 36%, 78. Syria, 39%, 74 IQ. Turkey, 25%, 86 IQ.
Now here was my critique of this yesterday, because I had to critique it, because it's one thing, obviously you don't want cousin marriage. You see cousin marriage in some of the kings, though. It's interesting because kings and queens.
Yeah, I was just gonna say England's like,
Yeah,
it's like that was like par for the course. A lot of these places. You try to marry your cousin.
Exactly. But what Andrew did here that I thought was a fault, like it is actually, he uses, remember the whole idea with what Matthew Dillahunty did with the univariate analysis, where he looked at, like he said, atheism and happiness correlate, and because he only looked at those two variables. So what Andrew did here is he takes the variable of cousin marriage or whatever, cousin interbreeding or inbreeding. He takes that variable, and then he takes all the variables of IQ, and he basically correlates them, saying that low IQ is related to that. But when I looked into it, it's like low IQ there's all kinds of factors that impact low IQ. It could be the fact that women don't get educated in a lot of those countries, and education does matter. And so it could be all kinds of factors. But then when you drill down on this idea of cousin marriage and cousin inbreeding, there's some diseases you can get from that, and within the disease, which is extremely rare, then you can have lower IQ with people who have, like for example, there's this one disease where you have to have tubes put into your brain to kind of take out some of the excess liquids, hydrocephaly. And so it talked about that, but it's like something like at most 120 people per 100,000 people in any of those countries has that. So it's so rare that this is the outcome. So my bottom line was, I showed a meta-analytic study, and basically it shows a 0% regression equation explanation between the consanguinity and IQ. And so basically all I was saying is correlating the two was a little bit faulty. But him bringing this up was interesting. It was an interesting approach that I would have never guessed. What do you think?
Yes, well, Andrew Wilson, he always tries new stuff. And generally he's really good at these debates because he does do weird things that are out of the box, but it doesn't always work.
Andrew, is that you? He might be in the chat.
Is he? Bring him in.
Andrew, get on the, if you want to jump in, if that's you, it says Crucible Andrew. How many Crucible Andrews are there?
There could be someone who just titled themselves that, but yeah, that should be him.
We'll know if it's him. I've got the link in there and it's open. This is an open chat. And actually, Andrew, I made a video about this yesterday, so I would love it if you want to defend, if you've got something that I missed, because it happens. People make mistakes, so definitely bring it on.
Because
he's coming in. It says, yeah, 1 second.
Is that actually Andrew Wilson?
We'll see. We know what he looks like.
Did you see the Nathan, Andrew's a fascist video, or Nathan had him on and tried to challenge him? That was the last
Nathan
thing
Ormond?
Yes.
I feel like I did see that, but I'm forgetting. It was so long ago.
It was a long ago. The video I'm putting out soon was him and Jim Bob did a thing. They both debated the same guy on secular humanism. And whereas Andrew Wilson actually wound up winning the debate, he's good at debates. I mean, he does well.
He does. And I'll give his wife credit too. Did you see his wife's debate on feminism?
No. I try to only, because I don't have endless amounts of time, I try to only stick to Christian atheist stuff.
You'd think I had endless amounts of time because I actually watched all of these debates, but I didn't watch the ones you watched. So I watched the wife yesterday because I was going to Aldi, and then I went to Publix. So while I like to multitask. So.
Right. No, I do the same thing. Like on my walk, I was just listening to them. They have it, but they always overdo it. Like I watched the Jim Bob debate. I didn't finish it. And now I'm watching the atheist analysis of it. The atheist analysis is 11 hours long. What the hell?
It is Andrew. Hey, Craig, it's Andrew. Andrew's in the house.
Oh, cool. That's hilarious.
Hi, Andrew.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Andrew.
I haven't met you before, but I have to say I've seen a lot of your videos, and I got to give props to many of your videos and your wife. She did a fantastic job when I watched her video yesterday.
Yeah, she's also an excellent debater.
She really is. Is that her first
modern day debate thing?
Oh no. She's been doing anti-feminist debates for years. She's probably the best anti-feminist debater in the country.
So you said. Now, I looked at your video and I thought it was a univariate analysis, but hey, I could be wrong. So what do you have there that shows that there's a correlation that's really strong?
Well, it's not just a correlation. If we're talking about what makes a fact, you're going to use the strongest correlate. So otherwise we would have no way to know what a fact is. So if I were to say, for instance, Jim was electrocuted, right? And well, yes, there was electricity present, but there was also skin present, and there was also a human present. There was also clothing present. The strongest correlate there is the electricity, you would agree, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so he was electrocuted by the electricity. So what I did was went through, and I put this in the opening statement. The sources are on the slides. The strongest correlate from the IQ is the 1,400 years of genetic loading. So they don't just do cousin marriage where it's, this first cousin married this first cousin. It's this first cousin married this first cousin, and then their children married first cousins, their children married first cousins, et cetera, which creates genetic loading. And that's what, that is the number one correlate for the massive IQ decrease in these Muslim nations. The way that we can determine that is because if we look at the Arab people groups that are Christians versus Muslim, you'll note that the IQs of the Christian groups are always higher due to the fact that they don't marry their cousins.
Interesting. Now I see your point. I want to get into that. So how, and I'm just asking this a little skeptically because I did look at a meta-analytic study where they actually looked at IQ and they looked at the correlates and they had a 0 correlation. So in the regression equation, basically the coefficient was 0 for consanguinity. And so I'm just wondering, you're saying, how did they get 1400 years?
Yeah, well then why are their IQs lower when they're in Western nations and they practice the same exact thing? Why are their IQs still lower?
Well, that's the question. Are their IQs lower in the Western nations once
Yes.
they're here and they've been?
Yes.
So
yeah, only if they're practicing cousin marriage, though.
So you
It's
have
the number. Yeah, it's the number one correlate because of the genetic loading. So I can send you. Yeah, I can send you the sources that I used on it. But
I'm just trying to be as fair as possible to like every side because I want to make sure.
So
when you say,
some of this, a lot of the data doesn't get published because Muslim groups like CARE, they get upsetty spaghetti about this obvious fact, and so they have to present it in a neutral fashion. They can't even equate it with Islam. They're not even allowed to do it.
I was just going to ask that. Is it something intrinsic to Islam, or is it just like maybe cultural trends from specific?
You'll find this in any nation where they practice inbreeding. That includes certain Christian sects which practice inbreeding. You'll watch their collective IQ go down over generations.
I'm not doubting that that's possible. I mean, when I grew up, I lived on the street. We lived near a lot of cornfields in Illinois, and we were on a street where we had this group called the Waterheads, and they were inbreeders. And I mean, they had serious physical issues, and mental issues. And so I don't doubt that. It's just that I was trying to, when you look at the national level, it'd be good if you drill down to the individual level. So if you found, how did they find 1400 years worth of DNA where they could say you've inbreeded? They could tell by looking at somebody's DNA that it goes back.
Well, no, it's actually easier. So Muslims are meticulous. The reason they practice inbreeding to begin with is because the same reason that the English nobility did. It's because of title and basically land transfer and wealth transfer. They want to keep it family specific. So making money in Islamic nations is different than in Christian nations because they don't practice what they call usury, though I would dispute that's usury. Their direct lines of funds are usually in capital business, and so they want to keep that family oriented. That's why the practice is so kind of ingrained. Same reason it was with English kings and French kings and Western European kings. And so they keep meticulous records of who they've married and who they haven't married. And since they've been recording IQ, they're able to go in and take a look just since the IQ records have been going. And you can take a look at the genetic correlate with these deficiencies, which are due to loaded genetic breeding. You married your first cousin, then their first cousin, then their first cousin. And it's definitely, at least the research I did, is the strongest correlate between the collective IQ going down or up.
Okay. I could see it at the individual level. I could see how that could be definitely serious contributor to the equation.
Well,
sure.
How's it the individual level though? When
I say the individual level because when you look at the nation level, there's this thing called the ecological fallacy. So you don't want to take a mean score at the nation level, like saying here's the mean IQ at this nation and here's the mean level of people who inbreed. You don't look at, if you look at that, you're generalizing to a population where people might have a lot of differences within the population. And so instead, if you're taking the mean, if you're taking at the individual level, saying, okay, I'm looking at 1,000 individuals, 90% of them have inbreeded going back, 10 generations or something like that. And these people, when compared with people who haven't inbreeded, have significantly statistically lower levels of IQ. Hell yeah, that works. That shows.
That's exactly what you're going to find. Okay. So if you take a look at Pakistan, for instance, at the 65% level, you will find the distinction in the higher IQ people groups to be the IQ groups or the groups that are not inbreeding. And by the way, this is Arab. There's Arab scientists who have discussed this in depth. The UAE considers it such a problem that they're beginning to run campaigns against it because they know it's collectively, they can't find middle management. They can't find middle management or anybody with leadership skills because you have to have somewhere around 100 IQ just to perform basic middle management functions.
No, it's true.
So,
I was saying that yesterday. It's like the U.S. military will not take people with under 85 IQ because they're going to be a detriment to the force.
unless they get a waiver, they can get like a Cat 5 waiver or whatever that's
Oh,
called.
lovely.
If
So they
they,
can put them on the front lines.
yeah, if they need
go
you
on the
bad
front lines.
enough, if they need you bad enough, they can do it.
We
But
need
what
a
they're
decoy.
basically saying is like, are you functionally retarded or not? And if you're not, they're like, well, okay, we can make an exception here for certain people. And it's not to say that everybody with an IQ under 100 isn't going to be able to do middle management. Maybe they can, but those are going to be the outliers likely.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, you have to, I would think a minimum 100. You know, it's also interesting that I pointed out yesterday is something that a lot of people don't want to admit, and kind of what you're saying with this idea of hiding studies. As a female, some females would not want to admit this if they want to be biased and not admit what's going on there in the actual data. But when they look at IQ scores between men and women, on average in the United States, it's about 100 for a man and a woman. However, more women are right there around that 100 score, and more men are at both edges of the scale, like highly intelligent or highly unintelligent. You know what I mean? So
we're either super smart or meatheads.
exactly.
Or both at the same time.
And so it's an interesting thing because some women don't want to say that because they don't like the fact that there's not as many women at the high end of the scale, but there's also not as many women at the low end of the scale. So I mean, it's like it's people.
I've seen the bell curve. I've seen the bell curve there, and I guess it's interesting, but some of that has to do with crystallized versus non-crystallized IQ, which is its own thing. So I haven't had a chance to dive into it, but I would bet that if you adjusted for crystallized IQ, that men would basically average out about where women are, and then at the other end they would be higher. At the higher intelligence level, they would be higher. But I don't know. There's functional and then there's crystallized, and so men usually do really well on functional, less well on crystallized.
So I actually haven't heard the terms functional and crystallized. Can you
Yeah,
define crystallized?
well, those are old terms. They're probably not even used anymore. So I think that this was big in the 80s remember when IQ research was really going nuts. So and then it got shut down because of race, but it was going nuts for a while, and so there was terms which were introduced. I didn't hear about them until I heard them from Jordan Peterson years ago and started digging into them. But basically, functional IQ is like your ability to interact with things. Crystallized IQ is memory, recall, various things like this. So there's different forms of IQ inside of a general IQ score, or at least they used to parse it that way. So I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, very interesting. The idea of whether IQ can vary at all is they have shown studies where if you do hit the books a little bit, you can actually help your IQ score. It sounds funny. People say, no, that's not possible, but it actually, they've shown that. So there's
that's true. The big two correlates are going to be your parents and then nourishment when you're young. So when your brain is developing, that's that's part of the reason I think that IQ is starting to decrease. It's not just from mass migration, but because nourishment for kids is terrible. We don't breastfeed. We don't do any of the things we should do.
So I'm going to put this. I'm not going to play any more of your video because you're here, and it's pretty awesome.
Because you're here, he can settle.
Yeah,
it all.
I'm curious to know. Like, I'm just picturing your video, your modern day. What's your take on this? How did you think that you did? Andrew Haqiqatjou did. What do you think?
He got massacred.
Right.
So it was
Daniel Haqiqatjou.
Yeah, Daniel got destroyed. It was bad, and there's been a huge amount of Muslim cope around it, which has been pretty funny. But I knew going in, having kind of studied Daniel, and I put it in my opening statement that he would basically say that I was going to argue as a liberal progressive, which he did. That's what he said. The problem was that the debate topic was not really on theology or how theology interacts with anything. It was on which group makes for a better society. And so the term better here that we're using is going to be like ice cream. Is strawberry better than vanilla? So it's going to be based on preference, right? Preference for people. And that's kind of the terminology which is being used by better when we're talking about better society. And so that it's pretty obvious to me that people would much prefer to live in a society where you can have basic infrastructure because you at least have enough developmental IQ to maintain some kind of basic infrastructure, middle management, some level of technology which makes materialism better for people. And kind of my argument for that is that's why Muslims are all coming here and nobody's going there.
Yeah, that's the like the slam dunk in the argument. If the society were better, we'd be immigrating there rather than the other way around.
Well, it's not just the slam dunk there. The real slam dunk is here. The tie-in argument, which a lot of people missed, they thought that I was missing the moral implication, but I wasn't. So the way I tied the argument in was to say, look, you can't really say that Christians are a bunch of inferior people morally because their technology, it's like the Starship Enterprise versus the Apollo. And we're so technologically advanced in comparison to Muslims that if we decided to systematically exterminate all of them, we could. And there's very little they could do. So they're actually banking on our benevolence not to do that.
Yeah.
So it's really hard. It's really hard to make the you're morally inferior argument there. That's a really hard argument to make. You're morally inferior, but I basically 100% throw myself on the mercy of your morality, not to
and the mercy of your courts and your laws and
your laws, your courts, and most importantly your religion, which is what pushes all of those things.
That works. That definitely works.
Yeah.
I was telling. Let me ask him one question, Stephanie, first. Did you watch the Jim Bob naturalism debate? Was that in the same?
Yeah, that was on Modern Day Debate as well. That was his was Sunday morning. This debate with Haqiqatjou was Saturday night.
Okay,
so
because I watched that
Jim,
and I started watching their breakfast tacos. They did an 11-hour analysis, which I'm pretty sure you know who Breakfast Tacos is. I think I've even seen you on there.
Yeah, I've debated on his show before.
And they don't get it though. They don't get, Jim Bob and you both do tag adjacent arguments is what I call them, like based on the philosophy related to tag. They don't get it. I'm hearing them talk about the stuff Jim Bob was saying.
Well, Jim Bob moves much more into transcendental categories and arguments than I do. I'm a political analyst and a political debater who happens to be a Christian.
Good at it, actually.
Yeah, I'm not a Christian apologist by any means. So
when you do that, when you do the secular humanist, just give me 1 sec. When you do the secular humanist debate, that's what I'm talking about. Because I analyzed, I haven't put it out yet, but you and Jim Bob debated the same guy. I think his name is Craig. And you do very similar tag adjacent arguments where you're talking about, justification for humanism. And
Jim Bob's argument there is looking for justification. What I'm looking for specifically is results. So the reason I take on religious debates at all, even though there's way better Christian apologists than I am, is only if they have political implications. So if it's politics based, I'll usually take it on. And when you're asking which thing is better for society, that this is as much a political question as it is a spiritual one.
Right.
In my opinion.
It's an empirical question too, because you can look at the data and go like, okay, well, this society's better off, and they're Christian, so it's got to have something to do with it.
Right. It's got to have something to do with it. And so for making political prescriptions, we're going to have to take this into account, right?
Right.
Jim Bob's looking for, he's utilizing baseline philosophical arguments and asking for grounded justification, which is fine, right? But we definitely have different approaches. He's focusing on the philosophical. I'm focusing on the political, and that's what my arena is. So.
But I'm just saying the philosophical, they don't get whether on purpose the atheists are being obtuse about it on purpose, because some of them are smart and they almost get the philosophy, and they could get it, but they don't get it. They were analyzing Jim Bob as if he was talking from outer space, and I knew exactly what he was saying.
Well, that's when you start getting into heady philosophical debates, people often lose their way because it can be difficult to follow unless you have some kind of grounded training in philosophy. So maybe you don't have any trouble following it, but I can understand why so many people do.
No, I agree. I think that's why people think the tag argument is bad when it's really strong, is because they just don't get it.
No, yeah, it's a very, yeah, the transcendental argument is a very strong argument that'll at least get you to a mind, and that's that's something. But it's often instantly dismissed as and basically being something that's nonsense by people who just don't understand.
Right, they don't get it.
That you have to, yeah.
You have to assume God to prove God. This poster could be the justification for all knowledge.
Let me ask you guys this. I want to circle back a little bit to that debate, just because I don't feel like we've gotten enough squeezed out of that enough, because there's
squeeze the juice out of the
I mean, like, what do you
lemon,
think,
so to speak?
I want to know what Andrew thinks about this IQ fetishist comment.
Well, the reason that so Daniel was panicking about halfway through the debate. He didn't know really what the answer was, because there isn't one, right? There really isn't. And so what he wanted to do then was parse it by race, and he said, no, race has more to do with IQ than than the religion. And maybe let's just grant it. And I did. I said, well, I'll just grant it, right? Even if that was the case, it would still negatively affect IQ, regardless of race, if you practice inbreeding, especially intergenerational inbreeding. So that really doesn't matter. It doesn't have any bearing on the argument at all. It would still be bad, and if Christians came in and ended the practice, which they do, it would still be better for those people groups. So it doesn't really matter. And that kind of shut the whole thing down.
Yeah. I mean, I just to highlight that. So that was Daniel Haqiqatjou, and then there was 2 other Muslim debates, and I don't know if you happen to catch either of them. At least the ones that I saw. There was one with Inspiring Philosophy and Jvnior, and then there was another one with Jvad and Apostate Prophet. Did you see those?
I did not, because I had to do 2 back-to-back debates. One with Richard Carrier.
I didn't see that. Where's that?
Well, that's on Modern Day Debate. It hasn't come out yet. And that one had much more stringent rules. And then this one with Daniel Haqiqatjou, I really had to focus my time on making sure I had all the debate prep ready to go, rather than focusing on other people's debates.
Well, let me ask you that then about Richard Carrier, because I did see that debate, but I was trying to click on it, and I think it might be behind a membership
paywall
or something.
Yeah.
So how did that go? What were you guys debating?
Well, we were debating whether or not secular humanism was better for society than Christianity.
Now that's you're really good at that one.
Well, we ended up honing in on, for a lot of the debate, on the idea of fascism, and his definition of fascism was so broad that he ended up at certain points of the debate admitting that there are democratic fascists, and that we would live in a democratic fascist society under the conditionals of people using democracy to vote in things they want. And it was a mess. The whole thing was a mess. It ended up being more of a one-sided interrogation than anything else, because he just really didn't have much to say to me. So,
how did he define it that was so broad?
He said, let me think of what the definition
They don't define it. A lot of these times,
yeah, I think
Nathan Cook was trying to pin.
Well, he wasn't able to. Yeah, digital gnosis.
You as a niece. Yeah, but was that filmed recently? Because I saw it like a few months ago. And then
he went on and made a 5-hour Cope video about it because he couldn't define it, even though he was calling me it.
In the video, he didn't define it either. He had his expert come on. It's really straightforward. You just give like 5 criteria, and then ask you personally, Andrew Wilson, do you believe this?
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is that these people are really busy calling you a fascist and not really busy telling you how you are. Yeah, exactly. So that was where he ran afoul. But it was the same thing with Carrier. He just had a very broad definition. It was only one line. It was something like use of force and I don't remember. You'll have to watch it. But yeah, it was a broad definition which I was able to hone in on, and then through the Socratic method get him to admit some pretty ridiculous conclusions. So.
Yeah, that word gets tossed around a lot.
Yeah, it wasn't as riveting as the Haqiqatjou debate. So
Haqiqatjou blew me away. I mean, I was dying. I actually was dying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, listen to this. I was like, I actually didn't know. I mean, I had no idea. You really opened my eyes, because I didn't know that cousin marriage was that popular in those countries.
well, and the thing is they kind of claim now it's just the rural areas, but it's like, well, that's where most people live. And by the way, it's not just there anyway. It's in the cities as well, and it's a major component. But most people live in the rural areas, so it is still vastly popular, and it's not going away. And it's been vastly popular for around 1,500 or so years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know what I'm curious about, because one of the things that he brought up too, Daniel Haqiqatjou, is he was talking about women and the treatment of women, and acting as if Muslim treatment of women is superior to how we treat women. And because you're a conservative and you like the conservative view on women and the traditional views as far as gender roles, what do you think distinguishes our view, a Christian view, or your view on women versus, say, someone like Daniel?
well, I think that Christians view women, going back to Eve, as having equal ontological value as men. But that doesn't mean that because you have equal actual value, as a human at the ontological level, I don't think that means that equality or egalitarianism is a good idea. And so this is because the role separations are set for if the Titanic's going down, the women get the lifeboats. And it's like, well, that's a privileged position in society. Mm-hmm. And so if that's the case, that you have a privileged position, then men need to be in the leadership position. And that's the distinction. It's not designed to be oppressive, right? Rather, it's designed to be liberating based on how we were created and what our teleology is and our purpose.
I can agree with that. And I'd be curious to hear what Craig thinks about that too. But going to right now, if you look at thousands and thousands of years, the gender roles always were men went off to war and women stayed home and nurtured the kids. Like, that's how it always was up until 100 years ago.
Right.
Well, it's more
the way we make money and the way we, you don't need part of the way things developed is because, men are just bigger and stronger and you needed them as soldiers. Whereas,
well, that's where the idea of force doctrine as a descriptor comes in. So force doctrine is stating that women who want to remove the patriarchy are just always appealing to the patriarchy because they don't have the requisite force to give themselves rights. They have to appeal to men to do so. And that's what they do.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they have to appeal to men always for their rights, and men don't actually have to do that. If we don't like the conditions we're in collectively, we have been known to just overthrow those conditions using physical force, and women are unable to. So ultimately, the teleological difference is tied in there, right? The fact is egalitarianism is only possible in modernity because men keep the infrastructure moving, and absent that, we see exactly what it would look like if you didn't have that sort of infrastructure and technology. It would look like a Muslim nation. So that's how it would look. So women basically are the benefactors of the labor of men, and also the benefactors of men protecting and preserving their rights. But at this point, they're taking more privilege in society, and men aren't having the address leadership roles which they're supposed to have. And so that's why you end up with a very corrupt society. It doesn't work. So we're going against our own teleology, in my opinion.
It's really interesting because
that's an interesting point.
Well, I listen to that, and I also look at like women leaders, and I'm an associate dean in my college, so I'm kind of technically a women leader, but I can see the view where there was a study where they talked about, like, this Harvard professor did a study where he took this woman who's actually based on a real woman called Heidi Roizen, and he compared her to this Howard Roizen. So basically what it was there was a story about a woman who was I think she was a venture capitalist. She was super aggressive, and he read the story basically to a bunch of people in a classroom, and half of them, he named her Heidi, and the other half, he named the person Howard. And the people who heard it that was Howard thought, I'd work for him. He seems like he's a pretty good boss. And when they thought they were working for Heidi, they're like, she's a little bit.
Rhymes with rich.
Exactly.
She rhymes with rich.
Yeah, who wants to work for her? She's a little, she's a little too much. She's off edge.
That's hilarious.
And at first, as a woman, you could take offense at that. But on the other hand, I also would not want to work for a woman who's like hyper
Super
aggressive.
aggressive. Yeah.
She's outside of her role, like she's outside of her lane.
Well,
you
I
notice
think
that all the time. Like my wife says, like, you know, she always wants, when she's trying to get something from a source, she always wants it to be a man, because she's like, the women are just nasty to her, you know, almost organically, and the men she can work with.
The thing is when you're talking about leadership roles, I think that people get very confused on the macro versus the micro. It's like women have always had leadership roles which are necessary. So the tender years for children, for instance, are mostly going to be women, and that's necessary. And then after the tender years, usually once the kid reaches an age where they can begin to rationally think about things, you see the father's role increase drastically.
Mm-hmm.
But you also see this in the social level. The idea isn't that some women can't make good leaders, because they can, and that's obvious. The idea is at a social level, for all of society, you really want the men in most of the leadership positions. That's what we're looking at. Not that there can't be micro cases where women aren't good leaders or aren't leading well, because there are cases where that is in fact the case. It's just the idea that socially, if you want to flip the script to women having leadership positions, then they need to also be in a position to be drafted and to maintain the infrastructure, not just benefit from it, or else that's not egalitarianism anyway. That would just be making men into a slave class.
Yeah, and that's something controversial too, kind of touching on the idea of women in the military, because we have a lot of military in my school, and I've talked to a lot of students who are both male and female who've been involved in the military, and some of the females, you know, they've gotten very good leadership positions, but some of the males have told me that they've been passed over for some of those positions. And so, I mean, my opinion is I'd actually rather see women away from, I don't want women in combat. That's just me, but I don't think.
Well, and they're mostly not. Overwhelmingly, almost none of them can make the cut. And the reason you don't really want women in combat roles isn't just because of the physical nature of it, but because your enemies will capture them and sexually assault them and send them home pregnant to demoralize you. That's what will happen.
Oh yeah.
There's other aspects of this that people don't really think about, because we've treated warfare for a long time as the technological superpower is kind of a joke, right? We can kind of get away with whatever we want because we're technologically superior to almost everybody we go to war with. But if that was not the case, and we were fighting with an equal force, which could happen, you don't want women on the front lines, because the demoralization effort of the enemy is going to be absurd. I mean, they will SA them, send them home pregnant, demoralize you. Anything they can do to hurt you, they'll do. And you don't want the resource, which is designed to create more human beings, to be getting chewed up on the front lines in this way. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, well, I actually agree with you on that. I also agree with you with women in the police force in certain types of jobs in the police force. So for the same reason.
Well, and then you can look at the relationship of prison guards who are females and prisoners and see that ends badly usually too. So
I didn't even realize women take some crazy roles.
They do, and it ends up being extremely detrimental generally when they do. And again, what happens is people will point to the few who are very successful as though they're kind of paving the way for others, but those roles by and large are not available to most women, because most women can't even make the physical cut for them. So
yeah, no, I could. I mean, I'll admit it. I have one of my colleagues is a female. She was in the military, and she literally jumped off the plane into enemy territory. And I thought, really, you were jumped off the plane? But now she's paying the price for it, like a lot of people are who are in the military. Is her back's always sore? I mean, it's a crazy thing. So, but yeah. So the other thing I was going to show you guys just from this debate that I thought was important is this world watch list, because I think in the 3 debates that I saw, a lot of them was talking about if Islam is better for society. And one of the things that I felt like, get this one out of there. One of the things I felt like that the elephant in the room a little bit was looking at, let me show you these numbers. So like anytime, I don't know if you can see this, but anytime you see a country and you look at what's going on, look at all the persecution sources here. So it's all the way down, communist, sure, dictatorial paranoia, yes, but also Islamic. It's like it go down this thing. It's like at every country,
Well, I'm
where do you
somewhat
see Christian in here?
well. The thing is I'm very cautious about using data like that unless I look into it because often things which would be considered oppressive, I don't consider oppressive. For instance, the idea of universal suffrage. If only men are allowed to vote and not women, I don't find that to be a problematic proposition. So that could be considered oppression, where I don't consider that oppression. I don't consider if you have specific guidelines for suffrage that only certain men can do it or only certain women can do it. I don't consider that oppression either. So I'm always cautious in what they put as their guidelines for what oppression is. Now, if you're talking about human rights abuses, things which would be universalized, like SA, for instance. Well, yeah, or SA would be the big one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, are you allowed to kind of sexually assault women whenever you feel like it? There's not much redress for them. That tells you a lot about the society you're in.
Oh, yeah. Or are you forcing women to wear, bags over themselves the whole time? I mean, it's they're not allowed to go out in public, and if they do, they get publicly flogged or be, who knows what else could happen.
Well, high levels of sexual assault, and now that tends to go hand in hand.
Yeah, well, this is
what's
the
going on in England. Apparently, and this is according to people who live there, but their young girls are being assaulted all the time and even groomed to be in these sexual gangs, and they're not doing anything about it because they don't want to be considered Islamophobic, the police in the area. So it's being really underreported, but they go hand in hand. They think that like the Western girls who don't wear the bags over their head are like loose, like slutty, and they're sexually available no matter what.
Well, head coverings in traditional Orthodox Christianity are very common, and it can be considered, and it could be considered social taboo to not wear those. But usually, it doesn't have the power prescription of law, and generally, it's not a thing where you have to be accompanied by a male, to go anywhere you want, because otherwise, you could easily be sexually assaulted.
Right.
And again, a lot of these, you have to remember that. When we think about IQ, we think usually of technology and things like that, but we forget that social things are also technologies, and social taboos and language and things like this are all technologies. And so the idea here is you have to have a people group who's also high enough IQ to have a social consciousness that makes sense. Can your people basically walk down the street relatively unmolested because there's some form of a social contract which everybody's kind of abiding by for some type of behavioral standard. If you have IQs in the 80s, like that's almost impossible. You almost can't govern it because people have lower impulse control. They don't think about the consequences of what they're doing. So the technology itself, it's not just torpedoes and artillery. It's also social aspects of societies. Those are also technologies.
So Andrew, when you talk about women wearing those, because it's interesting, because I go to a Catholic church, and at the church, a lot of women do come in with the headdresses on, and I think they're beautiful, the veils, and but they don't wear them out in public. I mean, I don't see them walking around at the grocery store or anything wearing those. And so, are you saying in the Orthodox tradition you might see it around outside of the church?
Yeah, in Eastern Europe, there's places in which head scarves. You're not talking about burqas. That's a different thing. But
like those pretty like scarfy, lacy.
Yeah, head scarves and things like that are often something that you'll see. But again, those are socially enforced. They're not enforced by law. Islam uses social force of law through Sharia. There's no separation of power there. So their social taboo is their law. And one of the things that you'll usually find from Christianity is the social taboos come from collective social contract because of IQ, not necessarily from the power of law. And that actually has more weight of force ultimately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there anything that you weren't able to say in either of the debates with Richard Carrier or with Daniel Haqiqatjou that you'd like to say now? Anything that
Well, the
left on the
carrier,
table.
yeah, the carrier debate should have gone on for another 2 hours because academics are really good at speaking and saying nothing. And when you untangle, if you're trying to untangle a single idea or a single word, these guys will give you 300 ideas in a single rebuttal. And when you hone in on one, they'll give you 300 more ideas that you have to then tear through in order to get at the thing. So it's hard. It's hard with academics to hone in on specifics, but I think we were able to get to at least some of them. But
I
no,
definitely
not
saw
really.
that
In the
in the Javad debate.
yeah, in the Haqiqatjou debate, though, not really. The idea here was just to say, if you have a society in which the people have some kind of preference for, it's going to be a society where inbreeding is a social taboo because it leads to these terrifically horrible outcomes inside of this society. And one of the things that Daniel continued to bring up was degeneracy. The West has done a terrible job when it comes to policing degeneracy, and that's true. But I consider first cousin marriage fairly degenerate, so I consider that degenerate. So when you move into these ideas, you start to realize, well, the semantics around degeneracy also. While I agree with Daniel that feminism is a problem in the West and social degeneracy is an issue in the West, and these are serious problems that are plaguing it. I'm not just going to give him kind of a pass and say, but these social degeneracy things, which your religion itself engages in,
Islam allows that you consider degenerate.
that I also consider horribly degenerate. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that those aren't even taboo. At least here, I can say for most people are generally against 18-year-old girls starting up an OnlyFans and engaging in prostitution. Most people are against that. Now, that's not to say that it's an overwhelming majority, but at least most, and most Christians are too. And so that's kind of baked into the religion. The religion itself is not promoting the social degeneracy, in other words, and Islam is. And I think that that's a big key distinction that I would have gotten into if we could have gone on for another hour.
I think the idea of women's rights too, because when you talk about over in Saudi Arabia, they kind of recently allowed women to drive cars. They couldn't even go to work by themselves. They had to be dropped off before if they went to work at all. And so, I mean, just the idea of going to the grocery store, a woman could not get in a car and go anywhere. And so, to me, that's degenerate. I think women should be able to drive a car. And
I don't know. I don't know if that's if you can make a good case. If you can make a good case for that. Let me give a.
Just keep it.
Well, let me give a counter there.
I got to figure out where you draw the line, Andrew.
If you guys can drive, sure, but
I need to know where you guys draw the line.
Well, let me give a counter to this. So, if the ingrained culture is that women are a valuable resource, and that men are kind of the protector class for them, and so they don't want them to walk around unaccompanied, and they want to be able to drop them off at work or pick them up, and they don't want them involved in certain activities, and the collective socially has decided that this is kind of the best aim for society, I don't consider that degenerate. I don't see how it would be. In other words, from a moral proposition, what's wrong here? What actually is immoral about a society prepping its social order that way? Because I don't see anything immoral there.
Well, because the powerful interests are restricting the rights of the minorities or the without
rights
justification. I mean, women can.
Well, wait a second.
I said, my wife
but when you say rights, though, you're invoking social constructions. No, you're not invoking rights which are given by God. You're invoking some sort of kind of made up social construction you give yourself, right?
I don't know. There's the one place where I disagree with you and Jim Bob. I think that rights, in order for, I agree with your premise. I've heard you guys argue both this on where if rights are not given by God, then they are in fact a fiction. But I think they are in fact God ordained. And I think that our Constitution actually spells it out that way for a reason.
But do you see how you're equivocating here? So the thing
wait, what do you mean? Because
I'll show you.
It can't be revoked by a human being. It can only be revoked.
Yeah, I know, but do you have a God-given right to drive a car, dude?
No, not necessarily.
No, that's the point. Yeah, that's my point. Is that
Right.
you're
But if you're not going to let somebody do something, I agree
Yeah.
with you. I agree with the principle of what you're saying, but in that particular situation, if you're not going to let somebody do something, there should be some sort of proper justification. Like
Why?
women
Why does
can
there?
drive
Why
this.
did?
Women can
Why
drive
does
this.
there need to be? Why does there need to be a proper justification for you to make a revocation of made up
Because
rights?
fairness would be an intrinsic right.
Yeah,
So
fairness
if
is
you're
not a
gonna let,
right from God. That's ridiculous. Show me the right from God for fairness.
Well, let me interject a little bit because I'm thinking about it. Sounds good on paper, maybe in a culture where men are trying to protect women. When it comes down to the application, I think about like I put myself. Say if I lived over in those cultures and I bring my own brothers, my two brothers, and my sister and my dad over there, and every time I want to go somewhere, maybe my brother's the only one home, and he and I get along like oil and water, and so he just decides, hey, I don't feel like driving you over there. Sorry. And it's like, I mean, I look at the application and I see a horrible life for the women. So
Yeah, you may. I mean, here's the thing, though. You may not like it because it's not tailored to your preference, but that's not really giving any justification for how you have a right to these things. So if the social order of a society that you're in says, look, women, you have to appeal to us for your rights. And in this particular case, we don't see that there's some natural right that you have to drive cars. And we think within the confines and boundaries of our society that you shouldn't. I don't see how you can make a justification that you have some God-given right to be able to.
well, do you agree with life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as God-given rights, or no?
No, those are axiomatic. And they were not in the Constitution; they were in the Declaration of Independence. So
Right, but
these are
no, but
axiomatic.
oh, they are
right,
axiomatic. That means there's something that you don't have to agree on. It's been intrinsically given to us. It's granted.
Oh, okay.
We
Well,
take
then
it for granted.
my axiom is that they're not true. There we go.
No. The idea of axiomatic is that it's intrinsic. It's something that God grants, not we. Like just like
Okay,
humans
but why
have intrinsic human dignity,
yeah,
God-given
why?
dignity. It's not something that you can confer to somebody else.
Yeah, but an axiom is unjustified. Just saying that it's self-evident doesn't make it so. I think that, and that's what axiom means, self-evident. And I
Right,
don't think it's
self-evident
self-evident.
meaning God granted. It's something
Yeah,
that God gave us.
and I don't think that they're God granted. What's the
well,
justification for that other than I said so?
well, what about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness? You don't think that
He
those are
doesn't.
intrinsic to a human being?
No,
Like those are necessary preconditions for a civil society?
no.
You think
Not only do I
those
not,
are
not only do I not think so, but the truth is that those are very nebulous terms. Like if we were to take this to its logical conclusion, you could make the case for DEI and egalitarianism by saying, we put blockages in their pursuit of happiness because they weren't born with an equal amount of stuff as you.
I'll
And it's
agree
like
that
you
pursuit
can,
of happiness is
yeah,
nebulous.
there's
I'll
truth
agree
in
with that
that.
one.
It's somewhat nebulous. There's truth in that.
well,
But
it's
that's
completely nebulous. And so the thing is like, no, I don't think that they're right. I think that that was really cool stuff to put on paper to mobilize people to go kill British soldiers. That's what I think.
Yeah, but I think we
and
can agree. I think if we had to pick out of those three, you, I, and Craig can all agree that life absolutely is intrinsically valued by God. Like God granted us when he said we're made in his image. We're all granted life by God and we're all equally, like you said, ontologically valuable in God's eyes.
yeah,
right.
but when you got a problem there too. When you say a right to life, though, right?
Well,
You would
who
agree with
doesn't have the
me.
right to life?
People who are condemned to death.
Oh, well, that's they have a right to life so long as they live appropriately.
Well, then they don't have a right to it, do they? So the
Well,
thing is, that's
Right, but then
interesting. Is like,
actually, the Catholic Church now
you're
doesn't
shifting the
allow
dialogue
the
from an
death
intrinsic
penalty, which
right
is
to
interesting. But
something where possible penalty, and that's a totally different whether, because there are Catholics who think are against capital punishment for almost exactly the reason you're citing,
and there's
and there are
Catholics who are
Christians,
for it.
right? But I'm not necessarily saying that those are like you can shift the dialogue to a place where it's unsettled and it becomes harder to see, but that doesn't necessarily
Justify,
mean
yeah,
that but that
yeah. It's
doesn't
not.
mean that the right itself is not valid.
Well, the thing is like that doesn't mean that the right itself is either. And the justification burden would be on the
No,
person making the claim it is.
I hear what you're saying to some degree. I think there's a
So,
point in it for sure, but
yeah. So
you
what I'm
do agree
saying
that there
here
are
is,
some wait, let me just clarify one
yeah.
thing.
Go ahead.
You
Go
do
ahead.
agree that there are some some intrinsic God-given rights by virtue of being born, correct?
I think that there's God-given duties which you can then make a counterpoint that those could be rights.
So a God-given duty would be like
To obey God. That would be a God-given duty. So if you have a God-given duty to obey God, and God gives you as part of your obedience something like you need to honor your mother and your father, I think you could make the case that that means your mother and father have a right to be honored.
Yeah, I
Does
think
that make sense?
I think we
Yeah, it
can
makes some
agree. At
sense.
least I'm trying to find some points of agreement. So I definitely think we can agree to the 10 Commandments, and we can agree to when Jesus said, "Love the Lord above all else, and love your neighbors as yourself." Those are His commandments and our duties.
Sure,
Right.
but you would agree with me that you have a duty if God tells you to go slay the Canaanites, to slay the Canaanites, right?
Had I lived at that time, that would have been the duty. Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Canaanites did not have a right to life.
Yeah, and I don't agree that everybody has a right to
that's
life
presupposing that the Canaanites did
necessarily
something that
in those
warrants
times.
it's like we put people behind bars. We don't have the right to put people behind bars except by virtue of the
Well,
fact that we've proven that they've done something that strips them of their rights for a limited period of time, as according to the law. So they
well,
have
then
the
it's
right to walk around and
yeah.
like I have the right to walk down the street and go do whatever I want as long as I don't break the law. Like that's part of the social contract.
And
And
if God gave the command to go and free all of those people from cells, you would do that, right?
yeah, but if I knew for a fact that the command was coming for God,
Yes.
that's the question, correct? It's like I
Yeah.
absolutely
You know,
knew,
yes,
I knew.
it's baked in. Yes, it's baked in. You know for sure it's coming from God. You would go do that, right?
Yes,
So it sounds
but I'd
like
have to.
ultimately your duty to the obedience of God trumps any socially constructed right.
Well, as a
And
Christian,
so,
I would definitely think that that's probably the case. Like
yeah,
if
exactly.
I knew for a fact that God told me to do it, I'd do it.
Yeah. So then if we get into,
I'd use the same justification that the justification.
I don't know if we lost Craig. Did I lose you guys?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I think you bring up some really good points, and I have to say, I've been back and forth on the idea of the death penalty because I supported it. I was around when Ted Bundy was, fried, and we were at Florida State, and we all had shirts that said "Burn, see Ted burn, burn Bundy burn." I mean, people were actually celebrating it because we were so upset with what he did. And then it comes to the Catholic Church now. One of the popes says, "Well, no, we don't want death penalty only because you have to give people the time to repent," and that actually makes sense to me. So.
Yeah, I generally err against the death penalty for the same reason that I'd like to see people reform, right? And
yeah,
that's a very typical Orthodox position. But the Orthodox position, of course, has nuance to it. That there are people who are so far gone that reaching them is seemingly impossible in comparison to the fact that they're probably going to do more horrible things to other people. And so, where does your duty shift at that point? Is the question.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why this argument is very powerful, right? We have to be very cautious when we say things like, well, I feel like God would want women to drive. It's like, well, I'm not so sure about that. And I'm not so sure that you're violating anybody's rights by not letting women drive or not letting men drive, for instance. I'm not sure that these are anything other than social taboos. Which we have intrinsically decided are rights, but they're not based on anything tangible. They're just socially constructed nonsense. So that's kind of where the reason I don't take those lines in debates is because they're losers, right? They're losing lines, and it's why Christians get politically slaughtered all the time because if they start getting into Islam about the micro nuances of things like female oppression. Islam has a powerful argument for cultural normalcy, which is not going to be easily refuted when they ask you, well, where's the right to women not having to wear a burqa anywhere in your, in your Bible or in, or in the various constructions of God's commandments? And it's just not there. Christianity is pluralistic when it comes to morality. So there's multiple different ways to reach the moral standard of God. So the question just becomes like, I'm not so sure that I would go down that road with, with sophisticated philosophical debaters, because I think it's a loser.
Yeah, that's very. I'm curious to know, one of the things that I have you listened to a guy called Raymond Abraham?
I have not, no.
He's actually a Coptic Christian, Egyptian heritage, and he spent a lot of his life studying Islam, and he's written a lot of books, and he can read the Arabic, and so he can go back and look at some of the older texts and actually say what they were really saying, and look at the Quran and see what it really said. And he talks about the history a lot, and he's a historian, and so he talked about how if it weren't for apostasy, the Muslim faith would have never really made it, like the rules for apostasy.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious and I wonder today, like what the dent that you and people like David Wood and a lot of other people who are out there kind of fighting against Muslims, kind of in a daring way, because a lot of people say that you shouldn't do that because they might do something against you. Craig's back. Just wondering, do you think we're winning the fight, I guess you'd call it, against the Muslim group, or you think they're kind of seeing the Muslim dilemma or any of that?
I think that Muslims will become more sophisticated as the years go on. And because they're a minority group politically, they align themselves with the left because the left has suicidal empathy. And so the left will continue to import more Muslims if they think that they'll vote for left-wing policies. And Muslims will do that because they have a 200-year plan, not a 20-year plan or a 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. And so they'll come in and vote however leftists want, as long as leftists continue to bring them in. And ultimately, the battlefront for the theology has been won, and it's Christian-apologists who won that. I just wish that I could see a lot more of them on this political side trying to actually take on these leftists in their domains. So because absent the political change for mass migration, suicidal empathy, they'll win by default. Whether or not our arguments are better at that point don't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a problem. And what I don't see, well, all I ever get is untold amounts of grief and shit from Christians, because at least what I call sewing circle Christians, because I'm just not nice enough, or, something like this. And it's like, well, unfortunately that sort of suicidal empathy is leading to the demise of the very society I live in. And in order for me to be effective, I have to be very jarring. And when I'm very jarring, it brings a lot of attention. And that's what brings attention to these issues. And yet I'm just mercilessly criticized for the fact that I win these political debates, but don't do it in the nicest way possible. And I think that that's another form of suicidal empathy.
I listened to David Wood when he was talking about his experience with what's it called? The guy the guy who passed away. The guy who wrote Seeking Oliphant. Oh, Nabil Qureshi. He basically said that he used to watch debates with Nabil, and Nabil, no matter what the Muslim guy said at the end of the debate, if the Muslim guy starts getting nervous, he starts saying all kinds of crazy things. Nabil always thought that it depended on the temper of the Muslim, whether or not he won or not. It didn't depend on the content of the debate. And so I think by you actually doing the way you do it, you kind of raise the bar on the Christian and say, this is the side that we're going to match you, showing you, we're not going to just sit there humble in the corner and sort of take your mudslinging. We're going to be out there mudslinging right back at you.
Yeah. And again, the idea here is that our side is very weak, and we're very weak politically because we don't really understand how politics is done. It's done through jarring. It's done through attention. It's done through people's attention span. And it's a very short attention span. So if you're going to get people's attention quickly and you're going to have them focus on an issue fast, right, you have to make a spectacle. It can't just be the same old same. You have to make a spectacle they haven't seen before, something that they want to watch, something that's entertaining, right, something that grabs their attention. Trump knew this, and so did Roger Stone. He wrote about it extensively. Mm-hmm. And this was the effect of the jarring behavior, which led people to their eyeballs, which did lead them to vote on these critical issues that they didn't even know about. They didn't even know were going on. And so the thing is I've always believed that the sewing circle Christians, or the people who endlessly criticize me for using no words and things like this, are silly. and that's just another form of suicidal empathy, which leads to the demise of people. And I think their justifications for it are very weak. And ultimately, again, I don't want to see my society collapse because a bunch of women are upset because I said the F word. You know, I don't care that much. I don't think it's that important.
I'm somewhat sympathetic to that side, to what you're saying, because I've seen it, you know, especially with the atheist versus Christians, because like, you know, a lot of times when Christians are saying that they're just being Christian and nice and, well, it's a Christian thing, they're actually just excusing weakness. They're not really being Christian. They're just backing away from the obvious fight that's in front of them. And like, I do think there is a baseline Christian, you know, niceness that you should bring to the table as much as humanly possible. You know, just like it says, as much as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. But when people start throwing down for real, you know, stand your ground. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think again that like right now I have every degenerate on the internet just gunning for me, right? Just every degenerate you could ever imagine just gunning for me. You know, your career is over, you're finished, you're done, blah 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 blah. I go through this about once a year, right?
Right.
But I don't care what they say, right? I'm not going to take a bunch of guff from, you know, prostitutes and things. I don't care about what they say. But what does actually strike me as odd is how many people self-identify as Christians who will side with these people.
Right.
And like, that's what I mean by suicidal. Yeah,
real world example. When Matt Dillahunty ran out on that debate, you didn't say anything all that outlandish and out of the box. You weren't being, you know, you said maybe one or two things I wouldn't have said, but that's normal. And Matt Dillahunty says crazy, terrible things all the time. So it was deeply hypocritical for him to go, this is beyond the pale. And I don't really think that was, I don't think that was the reason. I think that he was going to recognize that he was potentially about to lose the debate to, you know, what he probably considers an a-hole. Because your premise was strong. The underlying premise, if you listen to what you were actually saying, was, you know, we can put whether Christianity is true aside and just deal with whether the results are better for society at large. And I think that had as much to do with him leaving, because you didn't say anything all that out of the pale. You said a couple things that I wouldn't have said. But then,
the thing is,
wait, let me just finish the question.
Sure, go ahead.
The criticism of you afterwards, a lot of people got on your case from what I remember in the moment.
Oh yeah. Yes, and siding with the secularist who wants them destroyed.
Right.
And the thing that's funny,
have you guys watched Matt Dillahunty?
Yeah.
He'll say anything.
And it was necessary to bring this argument up because his opening was that Christianity leads to absurd moral conclusions based on how we would treat LGBTQ and women and things like this. And my opening was just mirroring that how can it be the case that you're dating a man who you call a woman and then say that you're not, your moral view doesn't also lead to moral, absurdities? And that mirror is what drove him out of the debate, not because of anything that I said. The guy is well known as being a complete jerk. But the thing is like...
That's why when I made a review of it, I was like, please give me a small break. Dillahunty was upset at, like, it wasn't civil enough. Come on.
Yeah.
They call it the hang-up for a reason, because he hangs up all the time.
Well, ultimately, if you want Christianity to thrive politically, I'm not talking about, through general apologetics that'll always have its field. But politically, we're getting just beaten mercilessly. I mean, we're just brutally getting beaten down in every single aspect you can imagine. And it's really because most Christians refuse to engage in culture in a way that is inspiring to anybody, or in a way that's jarring or will bring any attention to the actual issues that they're talking about. And I understand that I'm a completely 100% imperfect messenger in that aspect. But I sure wish that the suicidal empathy of the very thing I'm trying to preserve, which is Christianity for everybody. I'm not just trying to preserve orthodoxy politically. I'm trying to preserve all of it, because all of it has at least some value over secular atheism. And the fact that I'm under attack from Christians as much as I am from the degenerates, I think it's just absurd, and it shows you how bad the suicidal empathy has really become.
You know, I think you touched on something really interesting, and I also you, Craig, is this idea that the left. The interesting thing about a left, they call them like unholy bedmates or whatever. Why is the left sidling up with the ultra conservative Muslims? And I think the bottom line is both of them are kind of driven in a way they don't even know it. Like Muslims don't realize Satan is the one behind a lot of their belief system. I mean, the stuff that they've said about Jesus, that he wasn't crucified on the cross and some other guy might have taken his place and all this stuff. And then the idea that Muhammad initially met a jinn, a demon inside of a cave, and his sister told him that was actually Angel Gabriel. I mean, there's some weird stuff going on that side, but then also with the left, a lot of them, some of their ideas are really anti-life. And so Muslims say they're pro-life. And then I mean, it's the strangest thing. Like they talk about Muslims literally pushing people who are gay off the tops of buildings in these other countries.
Right. And then you see like you see people like Gaza,
gays for Muslim,
gays for Hamas and stuff, gays for Gaza Strip, and like, dude, go to Gaza and see how far you get. You know,
well,
craziness.
When you're dealing with people who have a short time preference, of course, actually meaning long time preference, right? But these people have an elongated view. So I've listened to Islamists inside their servers for years now and listened to what it is that they're saying. And they're basically destined to win. And they're destined to win for one reason. Their outlook and view is spanning 200, 300 years. They don't care. Their enroachment process, they know, is going to start small. And it's going to continue to build and build and build and build over time, taking advantage of the suicidal empathy of the mass enfranchisement movements of the United States, where everybody can vote regardless of state, caliber, things like this, regardless of information. And they simply take advantage of that and the immigration policies, so they'll continue to vote the left in as long as the immigration policies are neutral towards their nations. It's a really good plan, man. And they're going to win if we don't do something about it, you know? Like, it's a really good plan.
You know, I listen to these exorcists who say that demons take the long view too. I mean, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that you're taking the long view knowing that you will not be around to reap the benefits when you succeed in the end.
But that's what Christians are supposed to do. I mean, that's how we built the great cathedrals. You know, they took some of them took hundreds and hundreds of years when the builders knew that they weren't going to be around to see the end of these great massive cathedrals which we built. And the same thing when I'm planting roots in children. My idea for children is that they're going to have children, and my line's going to continue, and all of the lessons that I teach them in life are going to continue down the line, the same ones that my father taught me. And so in that way, I kind of spiritually live off through my own children and through my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I don't know how much of the stuff I repeat right now was repeated by an ancestor of mine from the year 1400. I have no idea. Maybe a lot of it. But the thing is like, that's the long view. And Christians are supposed to have the long view, and we don't. And Muslims do. And they're taking advantage of the political system. And if we continue to move into the suicidal empathy, we will lose this fight. And in fact, right now, I would say we're destined to lose this fight because we don't have any political will past be nice. And it's insane to me. It's like people looking outside and the entire forest is on fire. You know, and they're sitting in the middle of the fire, and you go, "Holy shit, the forest's on fire!" And they say, "Watch your language."
Watch your language.
You know,
that's so true. Well, that's.
Wait, Steph, let me ask you a question. Did you
go
see
ahead.
the one I'm talking about where Dillahunty ran out on him? You should watch that if you haven't seen it.
I made a video on that. I actually clipped that for a video.
It's hilarious.
It was so hilarious. I was dying, and I didn't want to laugh like as much. Maybe I didn't laugh as much in the video, but I was dying. Like I fell on the floor. Funny. I was laughing so hard.
All right, go back.
He did not just do that. And I take particular interest in that because I absolutely got annihilated by Dillahunty back in 2017 when I called them.
Oh, that's the famous one where you called the show.
It was the worst. It was the worst. And unfortunately, he got me. So when I see stuff like that,
I told you not to do that day. I
know. I
don't think you're ready for that yet.
I wasn't. So yeah, no, I got to actually, but it was, but I never called back, Craig. At least I can say that I've had some willpower since then. I live vicariously through Andrew and you. When you
I'm
guys
not even
call.
sure if Andrew's a good debater, but I'm not even sure if Andrew could win in the context of calling up, because Dillahunty owns the mic when you call up, and he'll mute you as he sees fit, and he'll, it's really hard to get your bearings. But
Yeah, you
the
have
best,
to find these people on equal ground,
the
or else
best,
you're going to lose.
the best ortho bro I saw was Chase on a call, and he called up. You've probably seen this, Andrew. He called, Chase Wilson, I think, or Chase Haggard. is his
Chase
name?
Haggard.
He
Yeah,
called
I
up,
know him.
What did he
he
do?
called up. He did a tag argument against J Mike, and he was really good. But they started cheating. He starts giving the explanation. He gives the short form of the argument. God, justified knowledge, whatever, and then he starts giving the long form. And J Mike cuts him off. He's like, "I asked you to give an argument." And I'm like, "That's exactly what he's doing, dude." And he's like, "That's exactly what I'm doing. What are you talking about?" It's like, So it's like, they cheated, but he did really well, I thought. I'll show it to you, Scott.
Yeah.
I'll post it for you.
Well,
So-
Chase Haggard is wonderful on metaphysics.
I haven't
So-
seen now.
Yeah, he
Andrew, do you
debated,
get along with
I
the
think he
apostate
did. Wait,
prophet?
one last thing. He
Yeah.
on the Crucible, didn't he debate? What's her face? I think that was the Crucible, wasn't it? That was one of the most one-sided debates I've ever seen. With
Yeah, against
what's her name?
Nikki.
Yes,
Nikki.
that was the Crucible, right?
Yeah, that was Crucible, correct.
Yeah. That debate was
so-
crazy. Oh my God, that was like the most one-sided Christian.
Yeah, the
atheist debate I've
Crucible.
ever
The
seen.
Crucible used to pump out some of the best debates on the internet.
Yeah, I used to watch
Right.
it.
That's your
For
channel,
sure.
right?
Yeah, but what happened was the channel gravitated more towards me than it did debates, and the formats started to kind of slowly change over time. But anyway, where are we at? You were asking me a question.
I'm curious because they call it ortho bros. Do you get along with Jay Dyer? Because Jay Dyer has debated some people, and I don't know. Is that
One of my close? He's
Are
a
you
very
guys
close
close?
friend. He's a very close friend of mine. Yeah.
Okay? No, I'm just curious because Jay Dyer's got a pretty big following, and then there's apostate prophet also is now ortho. So
Yeah, I get along okay with him. He's a Christian Zionist, and I don't agree with a lot of what he says, and he knows it. But interpersonally, I get along with him fine. I do think that politically, there's going to be more political debates between me and him in the future, I'm sure, because, unfortunately, the tenable positions for the future I envision and the one he does are very different. But that doesn't mean that we have to hate each other or that we have to be at each other's throats. And he is a brother in Christ going through his Orthodox catechism, and I want, his catechism, and I want to support him.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like him too. I think it was nice that Charlie Kirk brought him on right before the whole thing happened.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
he
see
did. He
that.
brought him on at TPUSA.
I didn't see that
Big-
at all. I gotta check that out. My wife was
Yeah,
at
big
the
T.
Charlie Kirk Memorial. She drove
Yeah, it's
from
big.
Arizona.
Big TPUSA event. He was there. Yeah. The thing is that again, I think a lot of that has to do with the inroads that him and Wood and others make because they're on the Christian Zionist side, and I'm not. So there's,
Did you
you know,
debate him on that? Did
I
you
did.
debate him on-
I
didn't
did. I
watch it.
debated, and I won. But
I won.
the thing is, he afterwards I took him out. We had dinner. I always have a big party when we do the debates because a lot of my fans will show up, and I want to make sure that they have a good time. So he's apostate prophet. Every time he's gone to one of the debate events I'm at, he usually goes to the party with us and talks to people. He's an affable enough gentleman, and I don't have anything personally against him. But there is, we are on different sides here politically, and because of that, there's going to be tension. And the fact of the matter is that there's a lot of Christian apologists and very few Christian political commentators and political analysts, and so it's very lonely on this side, very lonely.
No, you're right. When I try to think about it, I can think of like Jewish political commentators more than Christian. I guess Matt Walsh, if you count him, and Michael Knowles.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of those guys have, Matt Walsh especially has, those guys have adopted a lot of my arguments, in fact. So I still think that the Crucible and Andrew Wilson sets the tone for a lot of this stuff. I mean, we at least.
You got on Piers Morgan, didn't you? Didn't I see you there?
Yeah, he was on
Oh yeah, I've been on.
times I've seen.
No,
Few times.
I think 6 times now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one time
but
with
yeah,
Shank Uger,
yeah, there's lots of
Lauren,
there's lots of times when we're going to be, the political end of this is difficult because Christians have a lot of denominations and things like this. And really, my only goal here is to try to, mold the aspects that we do agree on into some kind of political force which can be utilized for our agenda. There's some things we can all agree on. Abortion, we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
The preservation of gun rights, most of us can agree on that. Some of the various cultural ideas around LGBTQ marriage, we can mostly agree on that. So there's enough there that once we get all that agenda done, then we can worry about the kind of interfaith political squabbling.
I think we could agree on communism too. Like, I mean, who doesn't? If you're a Christian and you support communism, it's like, where were you in the last century when literally 120 million people perished because of it? And what they
I don't see a lot of Christian
that.
Marxists, honestly.
No, I don't see any. And I think we can agree on that too. We're anti-communist.
Yeah, there's Marxist policies which need to be addressed too. But there's also the Zionist issue. That's the thing that needs to be addressed.
Well, that I could see disagreement on that. But as far as the communist thing, if you go back to the idea of the guns, you look at the very first step Hugo Chavez took, which was get rid of their guns. Like, people have to turn in their guns. Same thing over New Zealand. But everybody had to turn in their guns, and then he basically nationalizes all the major businesses, industries, and sends his goons in to take them over, and then they drive everything into the ground, and that's why everybody.
Well, this also happened with Pol Pot.
Oh,
and
yeah,
this also happened in northern Vietnam. Northern Vietnam was the same way.
Exactly.
So ultimately, Marxists always do first order disarming, and also fascist societies will also do that too. They'll also usually do first order disarming, permit only guns. But most of the world now is under that model. The United States is really the only nation left where the order of the day is not permit specific trust level guns. We can just own them because we have a right to them, and that amendment really needs to be preserved in a big way and not questioned, because it's our only recourse of force.
Mm-hmm.
So and Christians need to be able to defend themselves.
I couldn't agree with you more, and especially because when I studied what happened with, I studied the USSR, but the same idea where they take away your protection and then they go after you because they're the only ones with that protection. That's
correct. Yeah, it's soft targeting, and so and then that becomes hard targeting. But the truth is that that's a thing I think that most Christians can be mobilized for. We are a persecuted class, and I think that we deserve to have our guns. And if there is one right that I'm willing to get behind, social construct or not, it's that people have a right to defend themselves and their families. Mm-hmm. So, that's.
We have at least 2 guns in this house. I shouldn't tell people that, but there are guns here. It's
good. Yeah, good. I mean, the thing is I've never felt. It's funny when I go out with a group of armed people hunting or something like that. I usually feel less safe than I'm walking through an inner city with almost no guns, right? So that's the thing that's always been hilarious about it. But yeah, I think the political arm needs to really start moving, and it's really not. And online is dominated by apologetics, and it's not dominated by the political arm. And because of that, there's very few of us on this side, and so we're open for massive ridicule. And including by apologists who they kind of live in a bubble and they don't really realize that on the political level, you have to be very jarring in order to capture attention.
No, you do. And I think that's what gets you on Piers Morgan. So
now,
what do you think of Piers Morgan?
He's a favorite go-to, because he'll say he'll go there. He'll say the thing to Shank Uger or Tommy Lauren. I saw all of them, and they all went viral.
That's all of them. Yeah, they all went viral. Well, they always go viral. But that's the thing is the point is whether I'm doing something good and it's going viral or something bad and it's going viral, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, the point is it draws attention to the issues that I want drawn attention to. Mm-hmm. And so, ultimately that's the big problem here is if Christians don't get their act together with a political arm, we're in big trouble because our enemies do have that and they're very good at it, and we're just getting crushed.
What do you think about Zoran Mamdani? New York.
Oh, you mean the commie in New York?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that was always bound to happen. And if leftists finally get it in their head, if they actually do what Bernie Sanders proposed, where he said mass migration is a Koch brothers conspiracy, and it's all right-wing stuff that's led to it, which is kind of correct. If we actually end up with a socialist who runs on a populist message and ends mass migration, but keeps all the socialist policy, he'll win in the landslide.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, so this doesn't surprise me a bit. The issue here is that, of course, this guy's an open borders guy, and he's that type of commie. He'll run New York into the ground, and then we'll all kind of laugh at him and say, "What did you expect was going to happen?" But left-wing populism is coming, and we're fools to think that it's not. And we are unequipped to deal with it. We are unequipped.
I mean, the Democrat is mostly far left at this point.
They are
moderate voices left in the Democrats, and when they show up like John Fetterman and try to sound reasonable, people talk about primarying them and running them out of the party.
Sure, but that's not populism, right? They're not populist yet. If you have a left winger who runs on an anti-immigration policy, right, but then keeps all of the economic socialism, he's going to get elected on a populist message, and we're not equipped to deal with that at all. The populist message for the world right now is one thing, and it doesn't matter if you're in Western Europe, the United States, if you're in Canada, or you're in Australia. The populist message is no more immigration. And the first person who adapts that policy as the prescription is always going to win at the national level every time.
Yeah, because the problem is a lot of younger people don't understand economics is part of a problem, which is one of the reasons why people jump into that. And they'll look at housing prices and think, oh, the government, control. The government can do something. The government is regulating, and that's part of the reason. I could get into a lot of reasons, but I'm just saying, yeah, it's especially where you are, Craig, in California with all the overregulation. So the supply is diminished, the demand's high, and the same thing's going on in Florida now.
They haven't given any permits to rebuild. I don't know if you guys know, the fire destroyed the whole town of Pacific Palisades.
Oh yeah,
they haven't given out any permits to rebuild, and now they're saying they're going to charge people $25,000 a permit to rebuild their own house, which
makes sense. But the thing that's funny is, if you really wanted there to be less problems with housing in California and the prices to go way down, you would eliminate mass migration. And you would instantly find yourself with a huge surplus of housing.
The distortion in the marketplace comes a lot from inflation and money printing, because left to its own devices, capitalism naturally brings prices down because of the competition, and the prices fall on a lot of stuff that we.
Well, a lot of that is also mass migration. A lot of the inflationary money and quantitative easing came from the fact that people were getting loans, especially under Obama. They were getting these high-risk loans from Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, right? And what was happening is a lot of them were first-year immigrants who couldn't afford these houses, or second-year immigrants second-generation immigrants who couldn't. And so these people were getting these loans they were never supposed to get, and once the housing market pops, they have to do rounds of quantitative easing. Same thing with COVID. You have right now, we don't even know how many illegal immigrants are here, but even legal mass migration should be abolished immediately. I mean, it's a terrible policy. It's very unpopular, and the problem is that we don't even get to that, right? We don't even get to that. The Christian right online is mostly debating theological issues rather than policy prescriptions, and they're not even doing it from a Christian worldview when they do talk about policy prescriptions. And so what we've done is we've kind of ended up with this polarization of all these back and forth, the theological discussions and things like this, and we've missed the entire side of us being able to do action with prescription. And we really need to do that at some point.
I agree with you as far as the mass migration coming in and taking some of the houses, but that mainly happened in 2010 before basically due to no income verification loans. But now, they have income verification loans, higher interest rates. There's a lot of factors that most of the people coming in from places like South America who don't come in with a lot on their, a lot in the bank account, they're not buying, they're renting. But the thing is, they're renting in places like New York and pushing the locals to want to live somewhere else. And that's what's taken Florida and doubled our home prices since 2020. Like almost every house that's in a vacation destination in Florida has doubled in value since 2020.
Well, and they do give them FHA incentives for first-time home buyer loans. So, there's still a lot of people who are getting loans they really aren't qualified for, even with income verification, to be perfectly honest with you. And if you wanted to see a surplus of housing, the best thing that you could do is cut off mass migration tomorrow, and you would begin to see that surplus emerge.
Hey, I'm not for. I think we've got it pretty cut. I mean, isn't it pretty down to a trickle right now with what Trump's done, as far as migration?
No, not illegal immigration has gone down significantly. Yes, but when it comes to mass migration, we're still bringing in 1 million to 1.5 million a year.
He's talking about legal migration.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's part of mass migration policy, and that's terrible policy, and it's really unpopular. They come in legally to the UK too, and it's like the idea these conservatives have made this critical mistake of saying, no, we're all for legal immigration, and it's like, no, not really. You really shouldn't use that rhetoric, because ultimately all that happens is they just change the laws to make it easier to bring people in that you don't want here legally. It's a terrible policy prescription.
I think it depends.
Guys,
I think
gotta
you
go.
do kind of.
My phone's going dead, so I'm going to take off. It was nice. It was a nice chat. It was good
Yeah,
talking.
Hey, nice to meet you, man. You take good care of yourself.
Take care.
I think, Andrew, one thing I just want to say on that, as far as the immigration, coming from a university perspective, we have a lot of students who go through and they get educated here, and then they get master's degrees. And it's been very difficult for some of them they have sponsors for visas, but to get the government to say renew the visa after they've been here for a little while. So we've had some challenges, and we've also had challenges on bringing in international talent for people who have PhDs coming from the other countries. So I do think that they should, like you, I do want to vet people coming in from outside, but I don't want to necessarily cut them all off, especially if they're coming in and bringing.
Yeah, but why not?
I think there's bringing some brain power coming from other countries. Some smart people.
And then but there's also not, and most of them aren't. Let's be real. They're not bringing in the best people from abroad. That's ridiculous. And the thing is like
some are. It depends on the job. I mean, you really have to look at the job.
I'm not saying it's not the case for some.
I guess I'll say H-1B visas.
But most of the people who are coming through, they're getting labor jobs. They're not going and becoming rocket scientists at these universities. That's ridiculous. And not only that, the problem is that the people of a nation have a right to make a determination on if they want to bring more people into their country or not. That's not for anybody else to tell them that they have to or don't have to. And the people of the United States don't want to. And the people of Europe don't want to. And the people of the UK don't want to. And they vote against it every single time there's a referendum, and the government does it anyway. And so the thing is really at some point, if you really believe in this enfranchisement of rights and suffrage, when the hell is anybody going to listen to the people who are voting?
I agree as far as that what can happen, like what happened in the United Kingdom and Germany and some places like that, it can be horrible because the people are basically pushing back against this mass influx of people, and it's not worked out well for them at all. And look what happened to Sweden. I mean, Sweden's an absolute disaster. It used to be one of the safest places on the planet.
Well, and it's gonna get worse until economic mass migration is halted to the United States, and just like kind of nobody's listening, and it's silly. Because ultimately, this is, again, suicidal empathy. What's happening in the UK is happening 100% due to passivity and suicidal empathy. And it shouldn't be happening there at all, period. It should just not be happening there. The people there don't want it. It has nothing to do with whether they're white or brown or whatever. That has nothing to do with it. The people of the nation are the ones who should be determining the policy. And if the people of the nation don't want immigrants migrating to their nation, I think it's their business to do that, just like it's the business of Japan to do that, and they have. The Japanese say no migration. We don't want them here. That's their business.
No, I agree. That's why Japan is so homogenous as far as ethnicity. I mean, it's that. I think the last thing probably, actually, let me probably have to kind of close out a little bit, but I do want to ask you a couple other questions. So, and I do agree with you on a lot of these points. There's so much there though that we want to talk about. You've got somebody in the chat here saying it's just not affordable, fake correlations. Stats show us the more you bring in, the worse it gets. So there's a lot of people fighting in a little bit about that, but I definitely think that some of the countries have definitely had to the detriment. And I think in Europe, especially in England, there's too many wimpy people in the police force, and they're siding with the wrong side on all these different situations. And what do you think about, are you a fan of Tommy Robinson and what he's been doing?
I think that anybody who is leading the charge against mass migration to their nation, and their nation has voted consistently to remove the mass migration, is doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. Now, whether or not I agree with every position of Tommy Robinson's or not, I think that from my view, I would consider that a freedom fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like him. I don't know everything he's done, and I've talked to people in England who say he's done some stuff that they think's a little questionable. But I so what? A lot of people have done stuff that's a little questionable when they're out there speaking the truth. They get hammered by
politics, and politics makes for strange bedfellows, as the saying goes, and it is indeed true. The truth is that there's people that I disagree with consistently that I need to work hand in hand with in order to try to see if we can get some of these policies and prescriptions moved into the mainstream. That's just the fact of the matter.
I'm going to ask the question that they're all wanting to know. Now, Andrew, since you have been making a splash and you've got a very big channel and you've been on Piers Morgan 6 times and everything else, are you thinking about possibly one day running for office?
No, it would be a huge pay cut. So, I remember somebody asked me, would you run for governor of Michigan? And I was like, well, they only make $200,000 a year. Why the hell would I ever do that?
Is this your full-time job as Crucible? Is this your full-time?
Yeah, well, we have the second most super chatted channel in the United States.
Wow, good for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, we do very well.
You haven't been doing this for what, 10 years now, or how long have you been doing this?
Oh, less than that, about 5. And really only full-time for about 3.
Well, good
or
for
maybe
you.
2.5.
That's great. And so what do you have coming up next? Where's your next debate?
AmFest, I think. So I think we're going to be taking on Destiny and another guy at AmFest. So I think that should be pretty good.
Good. Yeah, I do not appreciate Destiny's views on just about anything. So
nobody does. But the thing is that you have to raise your visor in the field of battle against the people who are really good at what they do, and he is the best that the left has. So
yeah, he's good. I'll admit that.
And I enjoy taking those people on specifically because the more challenging the debate for me, the more fun it is. But I've been taking on people with degrees in poli-sci and PhDs and everything else forever, and I still think Destiny's the best of them. So,
yeah, no, he's good for sure.
But yeah, that's what's coming up. But running for political office. While I think I would probably make a good governor or even a good congressman or something like this, I think that the Crucible is more effective at what we do, which is, our job is to stall them. We're just trying to buy as much time as we can for people who are in leadership positions. And so we try to stall the agenda out through debates, through interactions, through making these people look stupid. And we do a great job of that. And maybe it only buys everybody 20 minutes, but that's 20 minutes we didn't have. So
yeah, I give you hats off. I just noticed you, maybe it was 5 years ago, but I noticed you in some debates on Modern Day, and I thought, ooh, this guy's he actually speaks his mind, and you're not afraid to say things that everybody else is afraid to say. That's the benefit of not being employed by the man or whatever, because you can say whatever you want and not worry about your employee putting the hammer down.
Well, and I never took any positions with the Blaze or with Daily Wire or any of these other groups. Instead, I kept myself completely away from any of that money, and we just utilize fan funding or the occasional ad. That's it. I'm not going to kind of sell out to one of these bigger industries because they'll curtail what our mission is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's
have you had offers from has Daily Wire contacted you?
Well, if I had offers from larger organizations, I wouldn't be at liberty to discuss them.
Oh, okay.
But,
okay. That's fair.
Yeah, that would be completely inappropriate. But The short answer is there have been larger organizations which have contacted me in order to bring me on for commentary and things like this, which I've respectfully declined. Yes.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad that my little channel somehow got your attention. So thank you for coming in here. I really appreciate it.
I like to watch the analysis of various people, and I've been to your channel before. There was another thing which you were covering that I thought was pretty interesting. I don't remember, but I always pop on smaller channels when I can. I know that it helps you guys out. It helps out the algorithm, and helps you with views. It helps getting you moving. And I know that there's a lot of larger creators who are, just snobs about that, but I've never been.
I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. I never thought you'd, all of a sudden I saw you in the thing and I was like, wait a second, is that the real Andrew? It's like it's like real Donald Trump. Is it the real Andrew Wilson?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the groundswell of support the Crucible has is because we go to so many of the smaller channels and we're willing to talk to all the hosts and talk to various audience members. And I think that I can make a compelling case for my worldview and a compelling case for why I believe that Christians should be moving in the political sphere as much as in the apologetic sphere online.
Yeah. And I like the fact that, I mean, one thing that I treasure in myself is I'm able to change my mind based on information that comes in. And so, like, I used to be a liberal Democrat 15 years ago, and I'm the exact opposite now. And so
you are a woman.
Yeah, I was, but I wasn't blue haired, I was a Democrat.
Yeah.
But I always hated communism. It's like always hated communism. So there were certain things I was like middle of the road, but now my middle of the road is definitely conservative. So yeah, no,
I understand. It's but the truth is that Democrat policies from 20 or 25 years ago are very similar to what you see in conservative politics now. They were once upon a time very anti-mass migration because they wanted to keep the union strong. And, they very much were kind of the party for the working class. And now that has shifted drastically into the party of the outlier. They want to, they have put all of their mass focus into the issues of the minority rather than the issues of the majority of the working class. And that's why they've been getting their asses kicked lately. But once they realize how to recapture that message, we're going to be in real big trouble if we're not prepared for it.
You know what? You just reminded me of something that I've always envisioned with the Democrats is, have you ever seen the Christmas show with the Isle of Misfits?
Yeah.
Like the misfit toys. That's what I always think, like the Democrats are going after the misfits. Like they're all over that island and the whole world is revolving around saying, when are you going to pay attention to anything else?
Well, it builds a very powerful coalition, and a coalition is what you need to win elections and to consolidate power. And so they're not necessarily wrong to do that. The problem they had is that they did it at the expense of the majoritarian working class. Mm-hmm. And once they're able to recapture the message for the working class, and they have the groundswell of support from the minorities, we're in big, big, big trouble. And that pendulum will eventually swing as soon as some of the more Marxist members recognize that their path to victory is just simply being anti-mass migration, and they can get all of their agenda passed. They're going to do that, and they're likely going to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they probably are, because a lot of people are so upset with Trump right now that are on the right. There's people on the right who are upset with him. So, which is
they're furious. The Trump being swept into office, the entire point was that he was going to be the anti-mass migration candidate. And nothing could be further from the truth at this point. It is true that he's done good work on the southern border, but if you stop the trickle of illegals and just replace it with 170,000, other people group, and then expedite them being here legally, you haven't done any of the things we're asking you to do. So that's the big thing. And at this point, unless conservatives can really wrap their head around the fact that they need to have an anti-mass migration message, they will lose, and they will continue to lose.
Yeah, no, we agree on a lot of points, so I think that's good. So anyway, I want to thank you for coming in here today, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to add?
Nope. I would just say I kicked everybody's asses in the most recent debate series that I did, and it was good for all of them. And I appreciate you having me on your show.
Thank you. And tell your wife I said she did a fantastic job in her debate yesterday that I listened to. She
Sure,
didn't do
she
it
always does.
yesterday, but it was really good. She did a really good job.
Yeah. Yeah, she's quite good. All right, I'll see you. Bye.
All right, thank you. Anam, I've actually got to run. But
Okay.
that's why I just kicked it out. But I want to say welcome, and I'm going to have these every single Sunday. I'm going to try to run these open chats. So feel free to for sure come in next time.
Okay, thank you. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. So just remember, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Thank you.